Okay, so now I'll touch about Singapore general elections and its correlation to real estate.
Wow.
Firstly, this can be a very sensitive topic. So as a disclaimer, up front, I do not represent any party whatsoever.
But you're wearing red.
Red is what colour?
Cannot say You're wearing the national colours.
Hi everyone, welcome to Take Away with Avenue 88 podcast, where we share insights on real estate industry. So I'm Jackie.
I'm Jason.
I'm Chantel.
And I'm Benny.
So today we will share on the outlook of 2025. And before we start, if this is your first time here, please subscribe to our channel if you want to have latest property market updates. So Chantel, let's start off with the news.
Yeah, indeed. One of the hottest news recently is definitely the Trump presidency. Yeah, before we look ahead on the potential impact of the Trump presidency, let's look back at what actually happened previously. So Trump previously held office, right, from 20 January 2017 to 20 January 2021. And during the initial phase of his office, there were some notable things that happened. Yeah. So this is just really immediately after he took office. So 3 days in office, Trump he started work immediately. So he fulfilled his campaign promise. He pulled the US out of a Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is like a 12-nation free trade pact. Can you imagine the rest of the 12 countries? They're like, huh? Yeah. So and after he did this, right? Shortly after, like a few months later, he then pulled out of the Paris Climate Pact. Which is like a pledge, right, to reduce greenhouse gas emission. Yeah. So and then after that, a few months later, there is a threat actually from Pyongyang to launch ballistic missiles near Guam, and Trump actually warned such threat will be met with fire and fury, which sets off a war of words with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Oh my god, okay.
Yeah. So but eventually they met in Singapore and then they kind of like, we are just glad that there is no, nothing fiery happened.
Then they kiss and make up.
No, but it was good publicity for Singapore.
I remember that scene.
Yes, so good for us. Yeah, which, that's nice. But another notable happening, right, was actually the trade war with China, where we see both countries, right, setting tariffs on export. Yeah. But interestingly, during this period of 2017 to 2021, the Singapore property market sees steady growth in price.
But is our property price growth because of him?
Yeah. Actually, no lah. I don't think. I don't think the growth in prices is directly due to Trump for sure. Yeah, but however lah, I do think that the Trump presidency, right, still matters because it matters to our property market, right? Because his policy would have an impact in global events, which would affect the economy and supply chain issues, and that. It will affect the economy and supply chain issues that may occur due to wars and all these things, right, may have butterfly effect on our property market here. So while the impact is not direct, but maybe Trump decide to eat KFC in US and then suddenly prices will drop in Singapore, like butterfly effect.
I think he's a businessman. Overall, he's a businessman. So definitely he will push the economy.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, jokes aside, right? So here is my take on what could potentially happen. In a recent news article, observers actually noted that the two factors that will most likely to affect Singapore from the Trump presidency, right, would be trade and regional security. True. So firstly, let's look at trade challenges. Trade challenges, right, would arise from firstly the US-China rivalry, because if they have like tariff on each other, right, it might also affect how trade happens in Singapore. And another thing is also Trump actually did indicate that he might do a blanket tariff. So it's not just towards China, but towards maybe China-friendly
He just want to make
countries.
More money from everyone else.
Yeah, correct. So this will also likely might have a negative impact on our economy.
This is because Singapore still operates as a major trading port.
Yes.
Oh yeah, true.
Exactly. So if it affects our economy, right, a less robust economy, right, may translate to moderation in our property market because there will be an impact lah. Yeah. So the second thing would be regional security. So things like war, geopolitical tension. So while historically, right, there is little correlation between war and property prices in Singapore. So war itself is unlikely to directly affect our property price, but like I mentioned just now, let's say if there's a war and then there's supply chain disruption, for example, like in the war in Ukraine, right, then there are certain things no longer in production or not so easily accessible, then the prices of some things go up. So there's all these chain effect, and all these things, right, may trickle down on to how well companies can do. So some companies may not do as well as previously. So
Agreed.
and also if the cost of products actually go up, it actually also leads to inflation. So all these things, right, would also affect the economy, which would then affect our property market. Yeah. So but on the other hand, right, instability in some region might encourage people in this region to move out of their region to more stable places. So I think likely we might see some increase, right, in people from these places settling in Singapore, which may increase the demand for our residential housing. So they might not become Singapore citizens, but maybe they will just settle here
Our
as
new tenants,
foreign- our new tenants or new PRs. So also, right, if Trump is able to end for example the Ukraine war as he promised, right, this might be good for global economy because then the supply chain might ease up and all that.
The world can
And-
run normally again.
Exactly, which would be positive for the property market. Yeah. So I also would like to add on a third point, which is movement in the stock market and crypto market. Yeah. So from his previous track record, right, as I recounted just now, Trump has a tendency to go off script. Yeah, and catch the global community off guard.
He's going to be the best podcaster.
Yes, all right. So so which will likely create movements, right, in stock and the crypto market. So like for example, recently after he became president, right, actually some of the stocks that's favorable to him actually went up by a lot.
Yeah.
And then Bitcoin
also went up a
hit
lot.
100K that kind.
Yeah.
So so that means that like there we can really foresee quite a bit of volatility to happen in the stock and the crypto market. So while it is not the best for the weak-hearted, right, it does present opportunities for investors to experience immense gain from such markets, because usually when a market is volatile, then some people do make money out of it. And similar to previous cycle, when people have made money from more volatile markets like crypto and stock, right, they actually invest their gains into real estate to diversify their risk.
Yeah.
So
but I
this-
remember the last presidency, Trump didn't really support crypto.
Yeah, like it seems like with
Okay.
Trump,
Things change.
you know,
Things change lah, things change.
he is a businessman. He is very flexible and
Yeah.
everything is negotiable.
Very adaptable.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
adaptable. Yeah, so it's always like America first. Yeah, so yeah, and okay, but with that, right? So back to this diversifying the risk, right?
Yeah.
So if people were to take their gains from all this more volatile market, likely they would want to put it into real estate, like maybe more stable. So this might translate to an increased demand in real estate.
True.
But-
Like a safer bet,
Yes,
right?
exactly. But that saying so, right, I also like to highlight that the Singapore property prices, right, it used to have high correlation to the S&P 500, which is like how well the top companies in US perform.
Yep.
So previously, it's a very high correlation, meaning that if the stock market go up, right, then likely property prices will go up. Then when the stock market crash, right, then the property market in Singapore
Yeah.
also will likely
Like a
crash.
delayed action, remember?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but however, since 2013, right, due to the multiple cooling measures in Singapore, the movement in the S&P 500 has a more negligible impact in our property market. So actually, Singapore property market now is like not as volatile. So even if the S&P market, right, becomes volatile, right, it does not mean that our market would be volatile lah. So but I still think that it would be interesting to watch how much of these gains, right, will flow into the real estate market.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So I think we really need a madman for the crazy times.
Yes, indeed. Like speaking of madman, right, so like in summary, I think one thing for sure about the Trump presidency, right, is that he is very unpredictable.
Yeah.
So there will definitely be an air of uncertainty. And this may not be a bad thing because for companies, right, this would mean that they just have to move more cautiously and plan their steps more thoughtfully. And likewise, right, I think for people looking to enter into the property market, instead of like having the anxiety of uncertainty of what to expect in 2025, right, if you're looking to buy a property, I think you should just focus on the right fundamentals and purchase a property within your affordability with a clear exit plan, and you will do just fine.
Yeah.
Because indeed, if a black swan event were to happen, maybe it might happen. History has also proven, right, that the market has the ability to recover. So instead of speculating the possibilities of the impact of the Trump presidency, right, it is better to purchase a suitable property that meet your objective with a safe strategy for exit.
And it's true that generally in times of uncertainty, real estate investment is always a viable option as compared to other investment instruments.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay. So next, I will touch on the interest rate. So in the global perspective, right? So economists predict that the U.S. Fed rates may start to reduce in the second half of 2025, and so actually we are already seeing signs of that already. And although Singapore interest rate is not directly linked to FED, right, the Fed's rates, right, but any decision by the Feds will also influence Singapore interest rate, given that the SGD is managed within an exchange rate framework. And for Singapore SORA movement, so the baseline forecast, right, some analysts actually said that SORA rates will either stabilize at current level or like slowly decline in the second half of 2025. And of course, let's say if inflation remains sticky and rates are also hold steady, even increase significantly in early 2025. So in short, mortgage rate will likely to go down further. I mean, this is what we see, okay? But at a very slow and steady pace. So they increase very fast. Decrease, they go very slowly. So actually, end of the day, so should you get a floating or fixed rate? Okay, in fact, my mortgage is going to due in coming March. So can you give me some advice?
Personally, last year when I bought my place, right, I actually went for a fixed rate because I don't like uncertainty of a floating rate. But also interestingly, because I got a 2 years package with a free conversion at year 2. So then let's hope that rates drop. Now I'll do a free conversion from there.
Yeah. So actually, my personal take is, right, since the rates is going down, then of course the floating rate is an obvious choice. However, because actually the gap now is quite high, so if the lowest fixed rate is right now is about 2.6%, okay, for the fixed rate. Floating rate is around 3.41%. So if the gap is within like 1% or so, I think it's still okay, because actually that will equate to about maybe $800 to $1,000 different in terms of your monthly mortgage. However, if the difference is less than 1%, that means, let's say your fixed rate and the floating rate difference is less than 1%, right? Then I feel that actually you should just get a fixed rate, no much difference. Because anyway, the waiting time is so long, and we don't know when is it going to come.
Uncertainty, correct.
Yeah. Because actually, since now the fixed rate, after paying over 4 years of 4% right, the past years, I think 2.6% now is quite a good price.
Yes, exactly. Like, I mean, HDB loan rate is also at like 2.6%. So it's actually not too bad. Let's say you just pack it against the HDB loan interest.
Exactly.
Compared to previous years, it was more than 3%. Some even more than 4%.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, so I would feel take a shorter lock-in period. So like maybe 2 years max is the best. Okay, and also at the same time need to ask this from the bank package, is that ask them not to penalize you when you sell the property. Because actually all this is so-called like you can talk to the bank.
This is an
you
important
can negotiate.
tip.
This is a very good tip. Yeah.
Okay, so for me to share, I'll be talking about cooling measures. Looking back at the history of property cooling measures, there were a total of 15 cooling measures implemented by the government since year 2009.
Seems like there are many more.
Well, 15 is a very big number for me.
It's a trend. There's a trend to come up with cooling measures.
True.
So mainly 2 reasons why such measures are needed in Singapore is that this is to ensure affordability of property prices, as well as to stray away from speculations. So I think among the 15 cooling measures implemented, the more familiar ones that we always hear of, or rather commonly heard of, will be the seller stamp duty, SSD, additional buyer stamp duty, ABSD in short, which was first introduced back in 2010 and 2011. Next will be the tightening of the LTV, loan to value, for property purchases in 2012. And the TDSR framework in June 2013. Okay, the latest cooling measure introduced is actually lowering the loan to value limit for HDB loan at 75%, which is actually the same as bank loan right now on August 2024 this year. So the question to ask now is, will there be any more cooling measures in year 2025? What do you all think?
Okay, my take is definitely there will be looking at the sales, and then new launch sold 99% on day one.
Exactly. Like, and the volume of $1 million HDB actually doubled from last year. So wow, fast and furious.
But of course, I mean, if you look closely, cooling measures that have been now these days, cooling measures also hit the first timers. For example, like the BSD also increased from the 3% to 6%.
Yep.
And then the TDS stress test also like reduced from 55% from 60%. So the LTV has reduced 75% from the 80%. So although cooling measures have been hitting the first timer, but not in the face, but maybe slowly from the back.
So we all know that property market has continued to gain momentum in 2024. And I believe this momentum will likely continue come in 2025. And with the lowering of interest rates, like what Jackie mentioned, expected to come progressively later on, this will actually bring about additional confidence for buyers out there. Also, we are expecting a decent number of launches and GRS sites coming up for tender in 2025. So it's really hard for anyone to predict if any new measures will be introduced soon. I remember back then a few years ago, I have clients taking the wait and see approach. I think you all should have experienced the same as well, as they kind of anticipate or predict that the prices will fall or correct after any introduction of after a certain introduction of a property cooling measure. But guess what? Prices barely drop. And instead continue on the uptrend.
I think after like every cooling measure, there will be like everyone get used to the price. They sit and wait. But after a while, then they come back into the market again. And then that leads to the price to increase.
So what does this tell us about property cooling measures in Singapore? I feel that the intention of the government is not to bring prices down drastically. That's for sure. Like hard stepping on an emergency foot brake for a complete stop. But instead, it's like soft stepping on the foot brake to slow down the momentum of the market. To slow things down a little bit. So when cooling measures are out, prices don't really depreciate, but rather we tend to see a drop in transactional volumes first.
True.
Volumes.
Correct. So personally, I think there are two things to look out for when it comes to introduction of cooling measures. Firstly, of course, is when the property market gets too overly hot, too red hot, like what Jason is wearing today. That's when price movements move upwards in a wider gap month on month. And the second thought is when the income growth versus the property price index to be moving in tandem. So when it comes to a point whereby the property prices trend index supersedes the growth of income, I think this will raise a great red flag for the government already. And that's when new cooling measures will be very, very possible.
That's true.
Okay, so now I'll touch about Singapore general elections and its correlation to real estate.
Wow.
Firstly, this can be a very sensitive topic. So as a disclaimer, up front, I do not represent any party whatsoever.
But you're wearing red.
Red is what color?
Cannot say You're wearing the national colours.
Okay, so 2035 GE has to be done by November 2025. So that's quite a long runway from January to then, because it's about 11 months and nearing year end of holiday seasons. So generally, the two thoughts for anticipating elections in relation to property, right, is whether would there be any cooling measures to cool off the market so that the masses are generally happy with this. And when I meant masses, I meant more for like HDB rather than private, and also for first-time property buyers. So, okay, the sad thing is that I just want to share that I personally have met really low-income family people with big families and not being able to afford even the cheapest HDB out there because prices are really so expensive and they have to choose to rent it out. So, of course, they will be expecting prices to drop from cooling measures. But I've also heard interestingly from another angle where homeowners don't want to have cooling measures because they want their property prices to continue to appreciate, to skyrocket. So the matter of fact that you see, you cannot really please anyone. But a measure can always work both ways. Let me explain to you. For example, August last year, August 2024, there's this cooling measure for the loan to valuation for HDBs dropping to 75%. So you see, for most people, they will say that, this will restrict the property prices to go down. But you must understand, for buyers who want to take bank loan and who want to take 75% loan, will not have enough down payment also. So you cannot please both people actually.
I remember that back then actually when this news was announced, then suddenly the buyer don't know whether can they make the purchase.
Correct. It was very sudden thing.
Those that just meet the mark.
So the game plan goes to the ruling party in who they want to please. But I think the general consensus is obviously to please the majority of Singaporeans, which is the HDB market. So a cooling measure before GE would be to their favor to delight the masses.
Or they can launch more BTOs.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They launched a lot of BTO recently.
So a bit of history and background. So during the last GE in July 2020, before that, July 2018, SSD was reduced to 3 years. December 2021, which was after GE, higher ABSD and tighter LTV. And in fact, when the GE was in 2015, nothing then and way before that was 2013 when the TDSR came out. So if we look at the history of trends, there is no correlation in the sense that when there's a GE, a cooling measure will appear. But let me talk about a bit more statistic here. So in 2015, PAP won 83 seats out of 89. But in 2020, they won 83 seats out of 93. And this is about 8% lower than 2015. So PAP may get a bit a little nervous here, and whether will they do something? Okay, we do not know. So I'm sounding a bit like a political analysis now.
Very sensitive.
But if PM Wong is looking at securing PAP as the governing party for the future years to come, maybe he'll have a chat with Minister Desmond Lee to come up with some measures to cool off the market and to create some happiness effect to Singaporeans. Okay, so back then I actually voted for Workers' Party. Yeah, I cannot say that.
Cannot say.
Okay, help me censor this all. Okay. Okay, but thinking that the last cooling measure was in April 2023 and August 2024 on the HDB matters, and actually since 2021, right, there has been a cooling measure every year. So 2025, if you say there's a trend for a cooling measure, this could be in line with the GE for 2025 to have a cooling measure, because private property prices and HDB prices have still been climbing, and masses has always been complaining about affordability and not forgetting the ever-growing 1 million HDB in Singapore. So would the yearly trending of cooling measures be in line with GE 2025? And as mentioned by Benny previously, that cooling measures may not drop the price, but it's a good gesture to Singaporeans to tell the masses, come Singaporeans, let me help you with a cooling measure. Okay, so the key thing here, I just want to say is this. As we do not know when will a cooling measure come into play. So if you want to buy something before a possible cooling measure, that may allow you to pay lesser BSD and loan more, or do you want to wait for a cooling measure to appear, prices to drop, but you have to pay higher taxes and able to loan much more? So it's your choice.
Yeah, man. Okay, thank you for watching to the end. On behalf of Avenue 88, we thank you for your support in 2024. If you have any further question, please leave us a comment, and we are always here to support. If you find this 2025 outlook is interesting, give us a like or share with someone else. Once again, thank you for tuning in to Take Away with Avenue 88 podcast, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.